It started subtly, so subtly that at first I convinced myself I was imagining things. Oliver had always been steady, the responsible one. At 19, he was already a young man with a firm sense of duty. His protective nature extending not just to his younger brother, Arthur, but to me as well. I had raised my boys to be strong, but more than that, I had raised them to be kind. They were my pride, my silent guardians in a house that often felt too quiet in my husband's absence. But something changed in Oliver. At first, it was the way he lingered. Normally, he was in and out of the house between his boxing training, meeting up with friends, and preparing for college exams. But now he seemed to hover near me more often. If I was cooking in the kitchen, he'd be leaning against the counter, watching me in thoughtful silence. If I was folding laundry, he'd offer to help, something he had never done before. Then came the questions. "Mom, do you ever get lonely?" It was an innocent enough question, asked while I was finishing up paperwork for my clients one evening. I glanced at him, surprised. "What do you mean?" Oliver shrugged. "Dad's never around. And Arthur and I will be out of the house soon enough." I smiled at him, ruffling his hair the way I used to when he was little. "Oh, Oliver. I have work, I have my clients, and I have you and Arthur. I'm never lonely." But even as I said it, I felt a strange pang in my chest. The following days, his behavior became even more unusual. One afternoon, I had just finished a session with a regular client when I found him in the hallway, standing by the closed door of my massage room. His expression was unreadable. "Oliver, did you need something?" He blinked, as if startled out of deep thought. "I was just wondering. What is it like? Your job?" I smiled, wiping my hands with a towel. "You mean giving massages?" He nodded. "It's rewarding. I help people feel better. A lot of my clients come in with stress, tension, even injuries, and I get to relieve that. It's something that takes skill and practice." He hesitated before asking, "Could you teach me?" The request surprised me. Oliver had never shown any interest in my work before. Boxing and school took up most of his time. "You want to learn massage?" "I just want to understand what you do," he clarified. "You've always taken care of everyone else. I thought maybe I could learn a bit to help take care of you." His words touched me, but they also made me uneasy in a way I couldn't quite explain. Over the next few weeks, Oliver's presence became even more pronounced in my life. I found myself second-guessing the way his eyes followed me, the way his voice softened when we talked, the way he made himself available whenever I needed help, even before I asked. One evening after Arthur had gone to bed, I was in the kitchen cleaning up when Oliver entered, standing a little too close. "Mom," he said after a moment of silence, "do you think people can change?" I looked up at him, sensing something deeper beneath his question. "Course. People grow. They learn." "Why?" He hesitated. "Because I think I'm changing." There was a weight in his words, something unspoken lingering between us. I wasn't sure I wanted to know what it was. That evening, after a long day of work, I decided to take a hot bath to relax. The warm water was a much-needed comfort, easing the soreness from my arms and shoulders. I let myself sink into the moment, closing my eyes and savoring the rare silence. But even as I tried to unwind, my mind drifted back to Oliver's recent behavior. His lingering glances, the way he seemed to want to be around me more than usual. It was as if he were searching for something, though I couldn't quite figure out what. After my bath, I wrapped myself in my robe and stepped into the kitchen, where the familiar rhythm of cooking brought a sense of normalcy. The scent of garlic and herbs filled the air as I prepared dinner, my focus on chopping vegetables when I heard footsteps behind me. "Mom," Arthur's voice was laced with exhaustion. "My back is killing me from training today. Can you help?" I turned to find him rolling his shoulders, trying to loosen the tightness on his own. My boys had always come to me whenever they needed relief from sore muscles, and I was happy to help. "Course, sweetheart. Sit down." Arthur settled onto a stool, and I placed my hands on his back, using slow, firm motions to work out the tension in his muscles. He let out a sigh of relief. "That feels amazing," he mumbled. I think Coach is trying to break us. Chuckled. Or maybe he's trying to make sure you're ready for anything. As I continued, I noticed movement out of the corner of my eye. Oliver was leaning against the doorway, arms crossed, watching intently. There was something in his gaze, something unreadable. You're lucky, Arthur, Oliver said after a moment. You always get Mom's attention first. Arthur scoffed, barely opening his eyes. Jealous. Oliver shrugged, pushing off the doorway. Maybe. Since when did you get special treatment? I sighed, already sensing where this was going. Oliver, if you need your back worked on, just ask. There's no need to turn this into a competition. But Arthur smirked, clearly enjoying the reaction he had gotten. It's not my fault, I asked first. Before I could stop him, Oliver stepped forward, rolling his shoulders. Well, I've been training harder than you. My back is probably worse. Arthur sat up, shooting him a glare. Says who? Says me, Oliver challenged. I placed a hand on Oliver's arm, trying to keep the situation light. "'Kay, enough. There's plenty of me to go around." But Arthur, never one to back down, leaned against the counter with a grin. "Mom, who do you think is stronger?" I blinked at him, caught off guard. "Excuse me. You've given both of us massages before," Arthur continued. "Whose muscles are tougher? Who's stronger?" I let out a breath, shaking my head. "I'm not playing this game, boys." Oliver smirked. "She doesn't want to say because she knows it's me." Arthur scoffed. "Yeah, right." Before I knew it, they were standing face to face, the playful teasing threatening to turn into an actual contest. This wasn't new. Competitions had been part of their relationship since childhood, but I wasn't about to let it get out of hand. "Enough," I said, placing a hand on each of their arms. "You two are not turning my kitchen into a boxing ring." Oliver huffed, but there was amusement in his eyes. "Fine. But I still want my massage." Arthur smirked. Yeah. Just don't cry when Mom says I'm stronger." I rolled my eyes. "You're both strong. Now sit down, Oliver, before I change my mind." As I placed my hands on Oliver's shoulders, working out the tension, Arthur leaned against the counter, watching smugly. "See? Told you I get special treatment." Oliver just closed his eyes, exhaling deeply. "I'm too tired to argue with you." And with that, the competition was over, at least for the night. The tension from the previous night had simmered down, and by the next morning, our home had returned to its usual rhythm. The sound of weights clinking in the garage signaled that Oliver and Arthur were already deep into their morning training session. They had always been disciplined about their workouts, but lately, I'd noticed them pushing themselves even harder. Perhaps their rivalry was fueling them, each one determined to prove his strength over the other. As I prepared breakfast, I heard the heavy thud of a punching bag being struck repeatedly, followed by the occasional grunt of exertion. It was their routine: wake up early, train, and then argue over who performed better. I had learned to tune out most of their bickering, but I always kept an ear open in case things escalated. Eventually, the smell of food must have drawn them inside because, soon enough, Oliver appeared in the kitchen, still toweling off the sweat from his morning workout. His muscles were tense, his shoulders squared with the quiet confidence he always carried, but his expression was unusually thoughtful. "Hey, Mom," he started, taking a seat at the counter. "Morning," I replied, setting down a plate of eggs and toast in front of him. "Training hard today?" "Yeah," he said between bites. "Arthur's getting better. I need to step up my game." I chuckled, shaking my head. "You two are always trying to one-up each other." He smirked but didn't argue. Instead, he hesitated for a moment, then leaned forward on his elbows. "Actually, I wanted to ask you something." I turned my attention to him fully. "What is it?" "You know how you helped Arthur with his back last night," he said. "And then you worked on me too." I nodded, waiting for him to continue. "I was thinking." He ran a hand through his damp hair. "Maybe you could teach me some basics of sports massage." I raised an eyebrow, slightly surprised by the request. "Massage?" "Yeah," he said quickly. "It's just We train hard, and sometimes Arthur or I get tight muscles or sore spots, and I figured it wouldn't hurt to know how to fix that. I considered his words. It was a reasonable request. As a masseuse, I had spent years perfecting my technique, learning the right pressure points, and understanding how to ease muscle tension. Teaching Oliver a few basic techniques could actually be useful for both of them, especially since they constantly push their limits in boxing. I think that's a great idea, I said. But it's not as easy as it looks. It takes practice. He nodded. I don't mind. I just want to learn enough to help when Arthur or I need it. I smiled, appreciating his determination. All right. We can start today after breakfast. After cleaning up the kitchen, I led Oliver into my massage room. A quiet, neatly arranged space with soft lighting, a padded massage table, and shelves lined with oils and towels. It was my sanctuary, a place where I helped people find relief from stress and tension. Oliver took a curious glance around. He had been in here before, of course, but never as a student. Okay, I said, motioning for him to stand beside me. We'll start with the basics. First, you need to understand the muscles you're working with. Massage isn't just about pressing into the skin. It's about targeting the right areas without causing harm. He nodded, his expression serious. I grabbed a small bottle of oil and warmed a bit in my hands. I'll demonstrate on your arm first so you can feel the difference in pressure. Give me your hand. He extended his arm, and I began applying gentle pressure along his forearm, explaining as I went. You want to start with long, broad strokes to warm up the muscles, I said, moving my hands fluidly over his skin. Then, once the muscle is more relaxed, you can use deeper pressure. He watched closely, nodding as I moved my fingers in slow, deliberate motions. So it's not just about strength but technique. Exactly, I said, smiling. Too much pressure without warming up the muscle can cause more pain instead of relief. After a few more demonstrations, I stepped back. Okay, your turn. Try on my hand first so you can get a feel for it. He hesitated only briefly before carefully taking my hand in his. At first, his touch was too light, almost hesitant. More pressure, I instructed. But not too much. He adjusted. His hand surprisingly steady as he mimicked my earlier movements. Good, I encouraged. Now, try using your thumbs to apply deeper pressure. He followed my guidance, his brows furrowed in concentration. This is harder than I thought. I laughed. Takes practice. But you're getting the hang of it. For the next half hour, I guided him through the basics of muscle relaxation techniques, correcting his posture and teaching him how to distribute pressure evenly. His eagerness to learn was impressive, and I could tell he was genuinely interested in mastering the skill. All right, I finally said, wiping my hands with a towel. I think that's enough for today. You did well. He grinned, clearly pleased with himself. Thanks, Mom. This was actually pretty cool. I'm glad you think so. But remember, massage is a responsibility. You have to be careful not to cause harm. He nodded. Get it. I'll practice on Arthur later. Smirk. I'm sure he'll love that. As Oliver left the room, I watched him go with a sense of pride. My boys were growing up, learning new skills and finding ways to take care of themselves and each other. And in moments like these, I felt reassured that, no matter how much they competed, they would always have each other's backs. The day was beautiful, the kind that made it impossible to stay indoors. The sun cast a golden warmth over everything, a gentle breeze rustling the leaves, and the sky stretched endless and blue above me. After a long morning of work and teaching Oliver some basic massage techniques, I decided I needed to clear my mind. Run. That would do it. Lacing up my sneakers, I stepped outside, inhaling deeply as the crisp air filled my lungs. Running had always been my escape, a way to shake off stress and feel weightless, even if only for a little while. With my husband away so often, my routine had become predictable. Work, taking care of the house, my boys, and making sure everything ran smoothly. But out here, just me and the open road, I felt free. I took off at a steady pace, feeling my muscles loosen as I moved down the familiar streets of our neighborhood. The rhythm of my feet against the pavement was soothing, my heartbeat sinking with the movement. I let my mind wander, thinking about Oliver's eagerness to learn yesterday. He was growing into a responsible young man, so was Arthur. Made me proud. The run was refreshing, but as I turned back toward home, my foot suddenly caught on an uneven crack in the sidewalk. Happened too fast. I barely had time to register what was happening before I was falling. My body twisted, and the next thing I knew, pain exploded across my lower back as I hit the pavement with force. A sharp gasp escaped my lips as I lay there, stunned, trying to process what had just happened. It radiated from my spine, sharp and unforgiving. I tried to sit up, but a deep, searing ache shot through my back, forcing me to stay down. I clenched my jaw, frustration welling up inside me. Great. Just great. Swallowing my pride, I turned my head toward the house, scanning for any sign of movement. Someone please. And then, as if on cue, I spotted Oliver stepping out of the house, his athletic frame moving toward the driveway. Oliver! I called out, my voice strained with pain. He immediately froze, his head snapping in my direction. The second he saw me on the ground, his expression shifted from confusion to panic. Mom! Within seconds, he was sprinting toward me, his strong arms reaching out as he kneeled beside me. What happened? His voice was urgent, his hands hovering over me but not touching, as if afraid he might hurt me more. I tripped, I admitted, wincing. My back. I can't move. It hurts too much. Oliver's jaw clenched, and I saw the worry flash across his face. But he didn't hesitate. Okay, I've got you, he said, his voice firm but gentle. Before I could protest, he carefully slipped one arm beneath my knees and the other behind my back. His grip was strong yet cautious, as if he were cradling something fragile. Oliver, don't move, he cut me off. I'll take you inside. And just like that, he lifted me effortlessly, his muscles flexing as he carried me toward the house. My head rested against his chest, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat oddly soothing against my ear. I felt a pang of embarrassment at being carried like this, but the pain overrode my pride. Arthur must have heard the commotion because by the time Oliver stepped through the door, he was already rushing over. What happened? Arthur asked, his face filled with concern as he followed Oliver to the couch. She fell, Oliver said, carefully lowering me onto the cushions. Arthur's eyes widened, and he immediately kneeled beside me. Mom, are you okay? I will be, I said through gritted teeth. It's just my back. Oliver glanced at Arthur. Help me get her to the massage room. Arthur nodded, and together they gently helped me up, Oliver keeping a firm hold under my arms while Arthur supported my legs. Every movement sent a jolt of pain through me, but their careful hands kept me steady. Once in my massage room, Oliver laid me down on the padded table, adjusting a small pillow under my head. Arthur hovered nearby, his face tense with worry. What should we do? Arthur asked, looking between Oliver and me. I started, but the pain was overwhelming. Oliver exhaled deeply, rolling his shoulders as if mentally preparing himself. Okay, Mom, I remember what you taught me yesterday. Just tell me if anything hurts more. His words struck me. He was taking charge, stepping up without hesitation. I nodded, trusting him. Arthur stayed by my side, his hand resting lightly on my arm as if his presence alone could keep me calm. Oliver warmed some oil between his hands, his touch hesitant at first. Let me know if I need to stop. I nodded, closing my eyes as he applied gentle pressure along my spine. At first, every touch sent a dull ache through my back, but slowly, his hands moved with more confidence, kneading the tense muscles with precision. Arthur watched closely, his fingers occasionally brushing against my hand reassuringly. Does it feel better? A little, I admitted. Oliver adjusted his technique, working carefully around the tender areas. His hands were strong but cautious, his breathing steady as he concentrated. Good, he muttered to himself, more focused than I had ever seen him. This should help. Arthur, still worried, stayed close, his eyes flickering between me and Oliver. "You're doing good, Mom," he said softly. After what felt like an eternity, Oliver finally pulled back. "How does it feel now?" The pain hadn't disappeared, but the sharpest edges had dulled. I let out a slow breath. "Better." "You did well, Oliver." A proud grin tugged at the corners of his lips. "Guess I had a good teacher." Arthur shook his head, smiling. "You're lucky you were here, man." Oliver just shrugged, but I could see the quiet satisfaction in his eyes. As I lay there, surrounded by my sons, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. They were growing into strong, capable young men, protective, caring, and responsible. And in moments like these, I realized just how lucky I was to have them. "Thank you, both of you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. Arthur squeezed my hand. "Always, Mom." Oliver nodded, rubbing the back of his neck. "You'll always have us." And I knew they meant it. Arthur exchanged a glance with Oliver, and suddenly, before I could react, they both leaned in and wrapped their arms around me. The hug was firm, secure, protective. Oliver's arms tightened slightly, his broad shoulders surrounding me, while Arthur leaned in on the other side, his forehead brushing against my temple. It was a moment of pure comfort, warmth passing between us in an unspoken understanding. I closed my eyes, allowing myself to simply be in the moment. These two strong young men, my boys, had grown into something more than I ever could have imagined. They weren't just my sons. They were my protectors, my greatest source of pride. "You guys are crushing me," I joked after a moment, though I made no move to pull away. Oliver chuckled and ruffled my hair, a habit he had since childhood. "You're tougher than that, Mom." Arthur grinned but pulled back slightly, his dark eyes scanning me as if making sure I was truly okay. "You sure you're good?" "I'm sure," I reassured them. "Just a little sore. Nothing I can't handle." Still, they hesitated for a second longer, and I could see the flicker of doubt in their eyes before they finally exhaled and stepped back. "All right," Oliver said, rolling his shoulders. "We'll let you rest. But if you need anything, just yell." "Yeah," Arthur added. "And don't go running off again before your back is fully okay." I smiled, shaking my head. "I promise." They nodded in unison, satisfied for the moment. And then, as if on cue, their expressions shifted, back to their usual competitive selves. Arthur smirked. "So, are we gonna train, or are you too tired after playing hero?" Oliver scoffed, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "I carried Mom all the way inside. I think that counts as strength training." Arthur laughed. Yeah. "Let's see how long you last in the ring today." "Bring it on," Oliver shot back, already heading toward the door. I watched them go, their playful banter carrying into the hallway as they made their way to the garage where their punching bags and weights were set up. And as I lay there, still feeling the lingering warmth of their embrace, my heart swelled with something indescribable. Pride. A mother's pride. For all the times I had worried about raising them on my own, for every moment I had second-guessed myself, wondering if I was doing enough, this was my answer.